I guess one topic that is meaningful to both of us is this idea that we talk in non-duality, that the inside and the outside. This is some a realization that one can have on the path, on the non-duality path or station, to realize that there is no inside and no outside, that there's no border between the inside and outside. A variation of that is that what happens out there, in the world that affects me and troubles me and makes me afraid, what happens out there, it's more like an extension of my inside, is an extension of my mind, my how I interpret things, how I see things are not how they are, but is how my programs are, how my lenses are. And yeah, can we speak about that, but from your vista of working with the people's inside and having been exposed and understanding people's inside and how it affects their inside, meaning their pain body, their trauma, their deficiency stories, and how they affects their outside, like relationships and jobs and self-sabotage and lethargy and such things.
Yes. Um, first thing I want to say is I don't think I really grokked that until the repression work. To truly grok that. I think before I was saying things like that because you can get some sense of it from just recognizing awareness, some sense that there's no inside and outside. And a lot of those teachers, especially in the more neo-Advaita style of pointing, will do just that. They'll say, okay, as you rest here, where's the where do you end and life begins? And then if there's any assumption there, they'll say, okay, you see how that seems like that's just the edge of your body. But if you look at it and just examine a little bit the thoughts around it, that doesn't feel like and so then you think, oh, I've now seen, and that's the thing, I've now seen that the inside and outside are one, which I think is just the beginning, because although you can have that seeing, if you have repression, the whole thing is to protect you and keep you feeling separate and surviving. That's the whole purpose of it. So I think I didn't really grok it until I went to that, because the purpose of that is self-protection and separation. So how it translated for me, because I was the first one to see it for myself before I worked with others, is that it was chronic pain. And so it wasn't giving any conditioning, it wasn't showing me anything, it was totally repressed. But when I made it conscious, I saw that all the issues in my relationships that I wasn't able to process were really coming from that. So when I couldn't express myself, when I couldn't set a boundary, or I couldn't open to anger, there was programming directly connected to it that basically said just that. You cannot express anger. You cannot say that. It's not safe. And then I literally just acted that out in different ways, in so many different ways. And then even the pain was like that. The that's like inside out, because even though people would say, well, that's inside the pain, yeah, but within that is even programming. Like, so everything comes down to that programming in the end, like the programming of the holding oneself back, holding back what's true, identifying with what's false. And is my feeling around this and my experience is that we're going to continue to identify with what's false out here in our relationships as long as we're holding back what's true for us. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Let's riff on this. So we are what you just said. Can you say just the last sentence again? We are going to keep identifying with
Yeah. If I
false
have to hold
there.
anger, if I have to hold anger back, and that's true for me, and I'm holding that in body, then I'm going to have to identify with what's false, because I can't be myself. And as I identify with what's false, that's going to be my external suffering. That's going to be my
Yeah,
relational issues. I'm believing that
yeah,
I'm not good enough, relational issues, all connected in some way, shadows, really.
yeah.
All,
Wow.
yeah.
It's interesting because also when I was more involved with the non-dual circuit of satsang, that's what I got. And it wasn't even Neo Advaita, but there was this thing as we were in deeper meditation or in some yoga, meditative yogic exercises, I was pointed to see that check the borderlessness of the experience of being aware and see where awareness ends, where me ends and the not me begins, and then as you said, will be, oh, my butt on the cushion.
Right.
Then the teacher will say, well, notice that's a sensation, and also thought, butt on the cushion,
Right.
and sensation that appears in this borderless space in awareness. Does this end somewhere? And look as much as you want. And so then we're like, yeah, this aware presence is borderless, and then there's all kind of implications, like going towards implications towards non-separation, or pointing the illusion of separation, which was meaningful and all that, but it didn't touch. I mean, it's meaningful and special and true and lofty and noble, but it didn't you are talking about a whole other thing. And it reminds me of I work with people, and this is an example. Several people, yeah, I don't want to mention names, but there's this gentleman, wonderful gentleman, who is traumatized in childhood. Parents were scary and mean and toxic, and he became very good boy, anger repressor, and very good. And he doesn't want to be like daddy and like them. He doesn't want to be, and he doesn't want to be an asshole. And he's very nice, very nice, very nice, aka repressing my anger, my irritation, what I want, my boundary, and all that. Yeah. And so what's happening is that he has relationship after relationship where mysteriously attracts a woman that takes advantage of him and manipulates him, and then anyway, so I can see if we're doing work together, he is more accessing anger, because that's what's missing. If he were to say, hey, dude, this is not okay, you are taking advantage of me, this is not okay, then he wouldn't stay in months and years in this relationship. So I can see his fear of his own anger, his fear of being an asshole, although he will never be an asshole.
Yeah.
Hopefully he may be. I think there will be a growth. Then invites in the so-called outside world like terrible, unfulfilling relationships.
That's a really good example for everybody listening, because I can relate to that person. When you talk about inside and outside, this particular experience that I had, where just like him, I was in a relationship, and I am, with my partner Chester, who's more of a vulnerable emotion repressor. So I couldn't speak up. Like, right, my shadow was his anger. He was more able to get angry than me, so that was a shadow for me. But I couldn't speak up and say no to this behavior or that behavior, because I was really shut down. So there's the inside and outside thing, because inside I have repression, and outside I'm not speaking in my relationship. And then I'm expecting him to change or open to this, but I'm not saying anything to him.
Mhm.
See? But so just by doing the repression work and being able to speak, it shifts the dynamic, because now I can say, this is how this affects me. I'm being emotionally honest. And he can then respond to that. And then so the outside changes because of that inside work in that way. That's a really good example. One of many,
Yeah.
I think.
And this gentleman is really serious about this, and so he's putting time. He's also meditating. He's doing first dimension presence work. He's doing repression work on his own. And so what's happening through, but he had like 40 years of this program, yeah, so it was slow. So he's more, now there's anger, and but then there's now still fear of being an asshole. So he can still say things, and he can still, but what is miraculous how the universe slash God, whatever, is just, it comes down to, hey, here's your relationship. This is going to be bad until you say no. Keeps every week, I can see he's funneled in there. And it's like, so from one angle, this is much more practical in terms of happiness for this gentleman, than to realize that the experience of being aware doesn't have a border. But I can verify this, but then I'm a compromised all day, every day.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
angry and resentment, and then becoming, let's say, married to someone I don't want to,
Yeah.
So
That's a good example. And I sometimes eliminate this way. It's like if you're sitting on a meditation mat or you're in a satsang, and the teacher's doing that, and you go, oh yeah, it's all one. And it could be a false confidence because we're not really preparing you for the fact that you have trauma that's
Yeah.
really behind the sense of separation. That's what's really behind it, in my view,
Yeah.
or that energy that we carry around. So as soon as you get off the meditation mat, you go talk to your wife. How come you can't see then that the inside and outside are one? If that was such a powerful seeing, what's the disconnect there? And I think the disconnect is the trauma and the repression that doesn't get met when we're just saying, just pointing to awareness in that way. So I'm just glad we're saying it, even if, how do I want to say this? If for no other reason than somebody might hear this, and even if they don't want to hear it, they hear it and they resonate with it, even if they don't want to hear it. And I didn't want to hear it either because I didn't want to feel anger. But goes deeper into the non-dual, is what we're saying. A deeper recognition and embodiment of the true non-dual there, because again, in my view, it's the repression and the trauma that makes us feel separate so much. It's
Yes.
not anything else. Like most of it is that
Yeah.
survival.